My streaming software does a countdown right before it goes live. 3, 2, 1. And I'd actually like that countdown. There we go. To be the first thing you see. That'd be fun. Gonna do that. Need a little countdown intro. Because whenever I fire up the streaming software, I always have to check and make sure that my microphone is working, and it looks like my microphone is working and that I'm streaming on all 3 services. Looks like we're live on YouTube and on Twitch, and come on, and we're live on LinkedIn. Hey everybody, good Tuesday morning. It is 2018 for some people, like my wife. It's the start of the week. Yesterday was a holiday. Now for me, I was streaming yesterday morning, and I was also working meetings throughout the day and into the night. My last meeting was at 9:30 last night. A little later than normal, but that's what you gotta do when you're working a small business. Gotta get on that grind. Hey, good morning. Welcome to the chat. Welcome to Dev Jobs Daily, where we hang out, while we put in our job applications. We talk about trends in the tech industry in terms of jobs and job postings. And we look at the news, kind of see what's going on inside and on the periphery of our industry, the tech industry. I have been a professional developer for over 30 years, as the scroll says, and done a lot of different kinds of things. I'm happy to share some of those hard-earned tips and tricks that I've picked up over the years by making lots and lots of mistakes. So if you're in the tech industry, trying to break into the tech industry, if you're working through the whole job hunting process, we're here. We're your hang. Come hang out with us and get some job apps out. Grab your carbonated beverage, your caffeinated beverage, and let's settle in and get some job apps out, right? I've been thinking about, which ways I could expand the stream, or what other features on the thing. We broadcast from 8 to 9 a.m. Monday through Friday. Generally speaking, I'm going to say holidays or not, since I streamed yesterday on the holiday, but maybe not on Christmas. We'll see. I've been doing this. I started just some test streams before the first of the year, but I really, in earnest, have been streaming Monday through Friday since January 1. And that's going to be my rhythm. This is one of the side projects that I wanted to get launched this year. I have plans to launch 30 things, and I've already launched 6. We're halfway through February, 6 weeks in, 6 launches of products and/or things. So I'm well on track to meet my 30. But the goal was ship them while you're still embarrassed, as they say. So there's a little bit of polish missing from the stream. The first ones were really rough. Hopefully now you can hear me and you can see me. And I'm streaming on multiple platforms. So we're trying to get the word out that if you have any friends who are in the tech industry, who are in the job search, and they need that buddy that they can just sort of check in with every day at the same time to consistently get out those new job applications, well, that's what this stream's all about, and that's what I'm here for. It sucks looking for a job. Everything about it sucks. And we in the tech industry know that even if we've had a job for years, I've had this current job for 3.5 years. Could be out on the street tomorrow. Absolutely could be out on the street tomorrow. Has nothing to do with experience. Has nothing to do with your job performance. Um, Especially if you, like me, work for a small business. You're always kind of running at margin thin, razor thin margins, and nothing is guaranteed in this life. The only thing guaranteed is you'll probably not have the same job in a few years, right? So, you know, but if you are kind of a serial monogamist in terms of you're not a big job hopper, my brother worked for. I have to remember to ask him. Every time I say it, I make up a different number. I know it was more than 10 years. It was less than 20 years, but he worked for Microsoft in Seattle at their campus. Sometimes they say 13 years. Sometimes they say 17 years. I don't know. It was more than a decade. And if you're like him, he found himself out of work voluntarily. He chose to move back to Texas from Seattle. He hadn't been in a job search in a long time. It was a bit of a wake up call for him. Me, I've been a bit of a job hopper in my career. This is the longest job I've ever had in terms of like a day job every day. I've worked for some companies doing like seminars and that kind of stuff for a long time, for a decade. But in terms of like going to the office every day, doing the daily grind, this is the longest I've worked at a business, and it's 3.5 years. 3.5 years. So if it's been a while since you've been in the job market, a lot of things have changed. We're using AI for everything these days. How that affects and changes your resume, how it changes your LinkedIn, how it changes even your photo. I am using a AI generated photo in my LinkedIn. I took a bunch of photos of myself. Didn't like any of them. Uploaded it to one of those AI headshot services. It gave me 100 to choose from. I found 15 that weren't scary and awful. And picked one that was, that not too horrible. And that's my new thumbnail on LinkedIn. So if you take a look at that, that is not me. That is AI generated, but it is AI generated from references of me. So what you gonna do? It's a brave new world, and we're one person. How can we leverage all these tools, these AI tools, these automation tools, to do more in our daily jobs, do more in our daily lives, do more when we have a spot job to do, in this case looking for a job. How do we multiply ourselves? How do we set up automations? How do we improve the writing on our resumes? AI has changed the way that I write code, but primarily in terms of my day job, certainly it's changed my writing. I am a competent writer. I've got a decent vocabulary, but it's not been my focus. It's certainly not professional writing letters and stuff to people, emails and stuff to people. I'm very kind of transactional and curt. I'm like, yep, here's what's going on. Here's I just dump info and move on to the next thing. I'm very economical about my writing when it comes to that stuff. And when you're in a sort of C-level role at a business, and you're in some level kind of doing marketing and sales for your business, it's better to have a little more polish to your writing. And so there's very rarely an email that I don't send these days that's longer than 2 sentences, where I don't write everything that I want to say just like I would normally do it, but instead of pushing send, I copy and paste it into ChatGPT and say, improve this please, and it does. It still has my voice in the sense that it says what I want it to say, and it usually uses most of my words, but the ones that it changes generally are an improvement. a year ago I was making a little more edits to them because it would change the meaning of things and sometimes get the facts completely wrong. It would just ignore some of the information in my email. But today, I'm barely having to tweak it at all. Again, I still have to do the work. I still have to write the original thing. I have to get the facts right. I have to state all the things I want to communicate. Um, but if you want a little more polish in the way that you communicate, absolutely use these tools. This is the thing about AI. It's trained on the internet and all the information that's on the internet. And who puts all the information out on the internet? Well, there are some experts who put information out on the internet, but the number of experts in any particular field is relatively small, right? And most of them who are really experts are busy doing the thing that their expertise is and getting paid for it. And so they're not putting out that much content. But you know who's putting out the majority of the content are people who are mid-level in whatever their job is. They got some time to sit down and answer questions on Reddit or, give their opinions about things on Stack Overflow and generate a lot of content with a lot of information in it. And all that stuff is the training data, right? So if you ask for a thing, you're going to get kind of an averaged out, because that's the way that LLMs work, an averaged out response to your request. And unless you give it context of very specific expert information that you're trying to leverage, it's just going to give you kind of the, mid-level average response. But the thing is, like, if I'm not an expert in a specific field, like writing or marketing or sales or business administration or whatever it is, if I have no expertise in it whatsoever, like asking for, the sort of average base functional person who does that job to come over and give me a info dump on a specific topic, well, again, I don't know anything in that field, so the information out of AI seems amazing, right? But of course, you bring an expert in from that field, and they look at it and they go like, well, yeah, I mean, that's all fine, but here's the real scoop. Here's what you really need to solve your problem, right? Like, that information is a little harder to find in an AI. The LLM in particular is really, again, a predictive model that's predicting the best / average response to the question. So, where we're able to add context by uploading PDFs with more specific information to draw from, we can get a little bit better responses. But when it comes to one person leveling up their abilities in a variety of different fields, that it really is, the LLMs are really kind of a jack of all trades approach to knowledge. And again, can accelerate somebody who knows nothing to the point of average. And guess what? Average is pretty good. Average is pretty good for most fields. So, all right, let's get to the job numbers. I check the job numbers every day. Oh, this is the wrong one. Every day, including weekends. And in the last week, the numbers have been flat. So we had the numbers have been flat in general, but we had a 3-day weekend, so that's not helping. The numbers were not great today. But in the last 6 months, we see a nice trend line heading in the right direction, up and to the right. And when we look at the last year, it's again nearly flat. It's mostly flat, but the important thing to note here is look at the kind of where our average number was in the summer and into the fall, going into the fall pre-election last year. It was considerably down. It's above that now. It's still not above where it was in the spring and going into summer. Hopefully we'll start to see that rise here, but we are above where we were a year ago at this time. So that all bodes well. If we could see that little, launch come March 1st and really double the size of the postings that are out there, that could put us up towards the top of this graph, and that's what we would like to see. A lot of uncertainty in the markets right now. The administration's doing a bunch of stuff that makes some people nervous, and nervous people don't like to spend money. People aren't spending money, aren't hiring people. That's just kind of the way things work. Salary is the biggest expense on a lot of businesses' line items, and adding another head means a lot more money going out the door every month for insurance and salary and all that stuff. So we would like a little more enthusiasm in the markets. I get those numbers. Wait, let me look over here. If we break it down a little bit more, looking at all the roles, JavaScript roles, in the U.S., again, it's been pretty flat for the last month. But hopefully we're about to see that kick into high gear and take off. But in general, again, if we're looking at trend lines since the first of the year, we're up and to the right, and that's what we want to see. But we've stalled out. We've stalled out with all this craziness in the news. All that enthusiasm post-election seems to be wearing off in terms of companies thinking that better days are on the way. Better days are on the way. Of course they are. But whether companies feel like it or not, based on, the markets and whatever's going on in the world, is a completely different story. For all the complaining about the last administration and the administration before that and the administration before that, every administration for most of my lifetime has been, in charge while we've had this huge bull run. In a lot of ways, fueled by tech, fueled by the tech industry. These lines are up and to the right. The stock market is all-time highs. But from day to day, we're like, oh, the world's ending, the world's ending. Like, just look at some graphs for the last year, for the last 10 years, for the last 20 years. And, there've been, 2008 was disruptive. It was not a good couple of months, 18 months for a lot of people. But by and large, you just stick with it. You generally speaking always want to bet on tech. Always bet on tech. Entry level, mid level, and senior level roles in the office. Up to the right, not quite as much. Again, kind of flattened out. And remote roles still up and to the right. Again, lots of talk about return to office, but when we look at just the raw numbers of jobs being posted, there's still a trend, an upward trend. The headlines are all stolen by large companies, Amazon, Meta, the U.S. government. We got to be back in the office. Well, that's what they have to say if you're a large organization. A large organization can't micromanage thousands of employees and say, oh, you'd be better at home. You'd be better. You're more effective in the office. They just can't do that because that creates chaos. How come he gets to work from home and she doesn't get to work from home and I don't get to work from home and this person's got flex time? Like, you can't, like, everybody, not everybody, but the majority of people would rather not have to be commuting. When I worked at Dell, I live in South Austin. Dell's in North Austin. And I was in the car between that and dropping my kids off at school and picking them up over 2 hours every day in my commute. I am a person who likes being in the office. I like being around people. I like the interactions of it. I am a creative person who thrives in an environment where there's other voices who to bounce things off of, to get feedback from, to show examples of work to, and get some feedback. I like that interaction. But is it worth two and a half hours a day in the car? And I did it for almost 3 years, but man, that is a grind I'm not looking forward to going back to. And so I get it. I get it across the board. But large companies, they can't do that. They just like the big. We're forced remote because of the pandemic, and the pandemic showed that a lot of companies, including knowledge workers, could convert pretty easily to remote, and in some instances be a lot more effective. Because whether you're a programmer, whether you're a writer, whether you're a designer, whether you're a UX person, you're data scientists, the most valuable work you do is the deep work, the uninterrupted work, the looking at solving hard problems work. Now, if you're at the senior level, it's a different kind of work than if you're at the entry level, but both of those have challenging material based on their abilities, right? And that entry level person, maybe it could be doing something pretty basic, but for them, again, they're learning their trade. They're on their way to becoming an expert, and that process means challenging themselves progressively with more difficult work and material. And in that process, they move from entry level to mid level to senior level. But every one of those people on the team, when it's a well-managed team with good amount of work, can find challenging material, and they are best solving those problems when they're uninterrupted, when they're focused, when they're in that flow state. I was dealing with a student the other day, and sometimes I get students through and they're doing fine, but they don't have that extra spark, that drive to be working on side projects, to be hustling and teaching themselves new frameworks. They're just kind of going through the motions a little bit. They're picking up the material, they're executing on it fine, and they're going to be fine developers, but it's getting harder and harder to stand out. And I just think that person who's spending the extra time waking up in the morning thinking, I can't wait to go work on this side project and figure this problem out, like those people are going to tend to get snapped up a little quicker. So thinking about doing a seminar, maybe a 30-minute seminar for this channel. I'm trying to think of ways to expand it. I'm thinking about doing like a 30-minute seminar where I tackle different topics every week in the job search. So things like putting together a resume. What should your LinkedIn look like? What's a good portfolio piece? Do you need a portfolio site specific to that? How should your GitHub be arranged and managed? There's probably about a dozen different topics I could sort of touch, like where to find jobs, how the interview process works. I'm thinking about doing like a little one-off, maybe a couple of times a month. It's going to take me some time to put together a presentation and everything. maybe not. I'm trying to do things that I'm a little embarrassed by, so maybe I'll just wing it the first time. I've got a lot of experience in this. Maybe I can just kind of take it to the whiteboard and do a little off the cuff rambling that maybe could be edited down to anything at some later date. I don't know. We'll look at it. Uh, Again, the main reason of this chat is just to hang out and get those job applications out. Have somebody in your ear kind of talking about tech, giving you encouraging words, and getting you down the way. All right. How are we doing on time? We're doing okay. So, looks like LinkedIn is up and running. I'm on LinkedIn all day, every day. Please consider connecting with me if you are not on LinkedIn. There's a link on the Twitch for my LinkedIn, and if my name, which is on the scroll, is not there, search that on LinkedIn. You'll find me pretty quick and easy. Easy name. I have an unusual name, and that unusual name makes it easy to find me. Easy to find me. I am on LinkedIn, and I hit the news. There wasn't really a whole lot of LinkedIn news today. So I always, for the stream, hit the Google News just as an aggregator to look at some headlines to kind of talk about. We got a cold snap coming through Texas, and specifically in Austin. Oh, we had another lotto win. We had a scratch-off lottery winner who won $1 million a couple of weeks ago in Austin. And somebody won $83 million. Interesting. City of Austin heightens traffic enforcement near bike lanes. Yep. Yep. Yeah, this seems like a developing story. I have not read it at all. It looks like it's all just happening this morning. But the Social Security chief steps down. A lot of people resigning, and it's gonna take a while for the effects of that to be felt. But we talk about this on the stream a lot in terms of companies doing these layoffs. There's no doubt that any sufficiently large company has waste in it, has abuse in it, has fraud in it. But it also has lots of institutional knowledge. There are people in any organization of any size. You get over 100 employees, there are going to be a handful of people that are the glue that are holding that business together. Sometimes they're high up in the organization. Sometimes they're in the mid-level, but they're just they believe in the mission, and they have an orientation towards doing a good job, whether they have a ownership in the company or not. They really own it, and they connect people. They solve problems based on institutional knowledge over years that they've had in the role, maybe even climbing through the ranks. And when somebody comes in and says, like, there's waste and fraud and abuse, let's just lay off X amount of people, and they've got a number, man, that's just not good. That is just not a recipe. Now, Meta's approach, they've been saying for a while that, we're gonna lay off the lowest performers. Okay. In theory, that sounds good. If you can, if there are metrics and KPIs that you can track and say, like, give everybody a grade, and based on those metrics, these people are low performers, all right, get rid of them and maybe hire back somebody else that you might think is going to be a better performer. That's a good theory. Again, in practice, these things are hard. because it's, again, weighing and measuring things. What we know, whether it's a large business or the federal government, the one thing we know is it's working. May not be, again, the best. It may completely, be off the rails in this place or that place. But in general, this machine does what it's supposed to do, right? Meta makes money. It's a machine that prints money. Continues to print money. We had more profits in the last year than we did in the previous years. Like, it's continuing to grow, even while Zuckerberg's off wasting so much money on XR and VR and glasses and a bunch of stuff that is not really paying off. Even with all of that spend. And again, I'm a big believer in that spend, because that spend is taking money that's sitting around doing nothing and investing it in the potential of innovation, right? And any company as large as a Meta, who, often find themselves in a situation where they get, the original people end up on the streets, or they move on and they hire in a bunch of managers and bean counters who come in and they don't want to take any risk because they've got a machine that makes money. Why would they risk that? They're just going to optimize that machine until it completely falls apart, right? But no, Zuck's still in charge. And Zuck decided XR, VR is something that he thinks is going to be a big thing. He wants to invest he wants to risk a lot, invest a lot, make a big bet. That's great. Absolutely love it. Government's a different thing. Again, always room for improvement, always room for optimization, always room for getting rid of fraud. One way you get rid of fraud is make sure that the people whose job it is to find the fraud still have a job. That's an interesting way to look at what's been going on right now. I don't really care too much about Mayor Adams and what's going on in NYC. Man, more airline stuff. What is going on? Southwest Airlines doing layoffs too. Interesting. Yeah, a lot of news stories about planes crashing and skidding and one place blowing up. Like, yikes. Some of that's probably just, the algorithm putting more visibility on things that people are already clicking on. Like, maybe some of these close calls happen all the time. We just don't see them. But right after a big crash, then a lot of people are searching for airline stuff. So then they start shoving that out. You never know how that stuff plays out. But unless you work in the industry, of course. Which haven't never worked in any kind of aviation. Have I done anything? When I did a lot of contract work early in my career, I worked for a bunch of marketing companies, and we did work for a whole bunch of different large brands. But I don't think I've worked for any airline stuff. Worked for oil and gas, worked for, that's easy to do in Texas. I worked for telecommunications stuff. Did some jobs with Coke and Motorola, lots of tech. I worked as a defense contractor, subcontractor, worked for them, doing work for the Marines. I think those are the big ones. Yeah, I haven't done much in the way of health tech, although early in my career I did a lot of the first websites for small doctor's offices and plastic surgeons and that kind of thing. just getting kind of their first website up and running in the late 90s. Did a bunch of that kind of work. Interesting. Interesting. Let's see what's going on in the world of technology. I am not a watch guy. You like watches? I'm wearing my Fitbit now. I've never in my adult life worn a watch, and then my wife gave me the Fitbit because I could benefit from being more fit. I think 3 Christmases ago, and I was like, oh, I appreciate the thought, but I'm probably not going to wear it because I just don't like anything on the wrist. I don't like it. Not a big fan of it. But this was small and unobtrusive. It's not like the big honking thing, which, we live in Texas. It gets up in the 100 range. I don't like a sweaty, sticky thing on my body. I don't wear jewelry. Other than my wedding rings, I don't wear rings. I don't wear necklaces or adornments of any kind. I just don't like that mess. But the Fitbit's been fine because it's pretty small and unobtrusive. But I can't. There's like no way I would wear that big honking wristwatch. Like, that's just silly to me. It's cartoonishly big. It's cartoonishly big. You like watches? I see all these guys in tech. They have to have their hobbies, which they make a crap ton of money. They just have to spend it somewhere. Some people some people buy cars. Other people, get into skiing or something like this, where they can spend a lot of money on stuff. And then there's that very interesting subset of tech bros who just love these watches that are, an obscene amount of money. I think there was a news story a couple of weeks ago that Sam Altman was on one of his promos, and he was wearing some watch that cost $700,000. I'm like, no, there's just no. There's no. That is, offensive on a level. I have some opinions about Sam in general. They're not particularly negative opinions, but I have some opinions about Sam. But when they're out buying these yachts and for millions of dollars, sometimes $100 million for a yacht, just no. That is an unnecessary use of money. That money could be done doing so much more interesting things. And really, what's the difference between a $10 million yacht and a $1 million yacht? I'm sure that the salesperson won't have a lot to say about that, but really? That is just all ego. Asus. I had an Asus a long time ago. I've always been impressed with their really creative experiments with tablets and computers, but I've only owned one once. It was fine. It was a little underpowered, so. But I didn't pay for the top of the line either. Trifold phone, $3,600. Again, I make a good living. If I wanted to, I could go buy that dumb phone for $3,600. I would never do that. That is ridiculous. Ridiculous. What's the delta between that and a $100 phone in terms of functionality? No. Okay. Doing good on time. I want one of these little gimbal phone holder things. Again, these things you can get them for $100 and some change. I just know I would never use it, but I want one. I want one so bad. But I know I'm never going to use it, so I haven't pulled the trigger and bought one yet. But one of these years, we're going to go on a vacation. I think probably Greece, maybe. We go to Greece, and we're going to visit the Acropolis, which is on my bucket list, but I haven't been there yet. But I'm always torn. Do I get the 360 one? Like that 8K 360 one that gives you the bubble that you're doing? Or do you want the Steadicam that just uses your phone? You know, do I want a separate device that is really cool, but at the same time, not as easy to edit with, or you got to have customized software and stuff to work in? We do, as a family, have done sort of a big trip every other year and kind of a medium-sized trip every alternate year. Last year we went to Peru. That was our big trip. We went to go into the mountains of Peru. So this year it's going to be kind of just around the U.S., kind of smaller trip, road trip. But then next year, 2025, we're trying to figure out where are we going to go. Again, Greece is on the short list. Italy, my wife has been, but I have not been. Spain, Europe in general. I have no interest in going to Australia. Love everything that they produce over there, but not interested in that flight. Not interested in all the nature that's trying to kill you. Where are we going to go? Where are you going to go on vacation next? Lots of video game stuff. Chinese scientists identify food ingredient they say could reverse some autism symptoms. Well, number one, it's in the Daily Mail, so consider the source. Number two, it's coming out of China, so consider the source. Interesting. I have two children, one who's in senior in high school, and one who's in college now. So we're a long way removed from having babies in the house, or toddlers running around. But 20 years ago, when we were having kids, that's when the first autism stuff really started to peak in terms of like, all these kids have autism. And there was a very common story, which was like, the baby was fine for a year, for 2 years, and then they started regressing and they started losing their language, and all these symptoms started happening. And so that's just the worst as a parent when all those stories are starting to come out, because it's just a ticking time bomb. It's like, hey, we had a baby. Oh, it's a beautiful baby. Oh, it's growing so good. Oh, it's running around. It's doing all this stuff. But you're just like waiting for that shoe to drop. Like, what's going to, they say one thing or they do thing, and like, oh, is something happening? Did they just forget the thing, or are they regressing? Like, speaking of stealing joy, sometimes not knowing is better in this case. But if there is a thing that could help, thing that could stop it, let's find out, because I know parents who've had autistic kids. Fortunately, our kids, again, did not happen that way. But for those parents that have to deal with it, especially the very severe autism um, effects is just, I mean, it's just a tough. Parenting is hard in general, but man, that's just an extra level. That is asking a lot, and the parents of those kids just do so much. How are we doing? Okay, 15 minutes. NVIDIA GeForce 5090 stock availability to be stupidly high soon, says leak. Finally got some good news. Stock levels rumors to surge in a month or so. Stupidly high, which means the black market will go away, which would be good. Doesn't mean the price is coming down. But if they're easier to get, maybe the price does come down on the 4090s. We shall see. How a computer that drunk dials videos is exposing YouTube's secret. How a computer that drunk dials videos is exposing YouTube's secret. How a computer that drunk dials videos is YouTubers by the numbers uncovering YouTube's ghost town, 1 billion unwatched videos. So I've got a number of YouTube experiments that I want to do this year, and one of them is in connection to a video game I'm releasing on Steam this year, but I haven't done much with that one yet. Mostly that's been marketing on Instagram and LinkedIn, but not on not doing videos yet. I have some ideas for it, but I haven't gotten around to it. I've got to get the game in better shape before I really go full forth with my marketing, but it's something I want to do. But I launched this other channel, this faceless YouTube channel, and I'm already behind. I got one video out, and I was supposed to launch another video yesterday, and I didn't get it done because I had a bunch going on this weekend. But I'm starting to kind of dip my toes into that space and learn about. I've been a YouTube consumer since like day one, but in terms of actually producing content, getting it out there, quite the noob. So I'm learning all about that stuff. But I want to do a bunch of experiments with kind of faceless channels, creating content that might be valuable to people, maybe repurposing it from other formats to a 24/7 streaming channels. I want to play around with 24/7 streaming channels. Writing software. I did an experiment during COVID where I created an app that just was streaming 24/7. Then went and grabbed all the headlines and did kind of a headline newsy thing where you could just turn it on and see all the headlines from COVID that were rolling through. And every 10 minutes it was on a loop. Every 10 minutes it went out and grabbed more stories and updated it and went through that. And then my work changed during the pandemic, so I didn't have time to follow up with it and continue to play with it. But in the back of my mind, I've been wanting. I've got like about a dozen different faceless YouTube channel ideas, and I want to get 2 or 3 of those off the ground with the idea that basically you use generative techniques to either grab real-time information or be able to generate content, animated content with an algorithm that can be easily sort of chopped up and scheduled in advance. So playing around with some of those ideas on the side. How are we doing on time? 10 minutes. Okay. What else we got? Windows 11 latest update breaks File Explorer, and there's no way to avoid it. Okay. 5090. Everybody talking about the 5090. That takes all the headlines. But $3,000 cards? Oh, yeah. Nope. Again, I'd buy a $3,000 card before I'd buy a $3,000 watch, but I'm still not buying a $3,000 card. There was a time in the early 2000s where I decided to take a break from programming. I was still doing programming, but I wasn't focusing as much on it, and really got into 3D modeling and 3D animation. And at the time, in the early 2000s, computers were still a lot less powerful than they are today. And if you're doing any animation, you really benefit from having a kind of a top-of-the-line rig in terms of processor. And video cards weren't as important in the early 2000s as they are today in terms of that stuff. But it was important to have a video card. And so that's the last time I really cared to have kind of a real top-of-the-line computer, because it needed that power to be rendering out frames and the like. I started 3D animation with Lightwave in the late 90s. I think my first animations date back to probably 97. But computers then we're dealing with dial-up at the time. Computers were so slow comparatively. The first job I ever got as a 3D animator, it was taking 8 hours to render out an individual frame on these what are now slow computers, but at the time they were top of the line, fast computers. We don't see those numbers anymore, not unless you're at Pixar level, and even then they're kind of doing all these render farms where they put 100 plus machines all working on a part of a frame so that it'll still be a lot quicker. Speed running videos. I'll fall down the rabbit hole sometimes and watch some some speed running videos, but they can be fun. But man, I would never be that guy. No interest in being that guy. That is a level of dedication. I'd rather play 100 different games than play one game 100 times. What is the new thing? What is the interesting thing? That's what I'm always looking for. Phone stuff. Lots of phone stuff. Okay. All right. Apple. Apple. Let's see. The Genki Moonbase Power Strip, a 7-in-1 powerhouse that you'll need in your life. Has it got a battery included in it? What is it? It seems like a engineer-designed, overbuilt monstrosity that frankly looks a little cool, and I'd kind of like to have one. But what is going on there? I do not know. Mistral releases regional model focused on Arabic language and culture. We haven't seen a whole lot about when you talk about these, generative LLMs from China, like DeepSeek, but of course they're all optimized and trained on English. but we're not really seeing, and not in our corner of the world. Of course, we're in our little bubble in America, but people making a French language LLM that actually is natively French, etc. Arabic is different. I have done some. I did a museum traveling show. I did an interactive exhibit for a museum traveling show. It was put on by Riyadh's tourism group. They, were trying to get people at the time, and when was this? Late 90s, like 97. They were trying to get people to come over to the Middle East, and it was just the beginning of them starting to invest in technology. And one of the things that they did was they had this traveling museum that they rolled around to different cities in the United States and encouraged different schools to do field trips to come learn about that. And I built a couple of interactive exhibits on kiosks where you could kind of learn about the history of the region and of the people and how they've changed culture over the centuries. And it was interesting because the whole thing needed to be in Arabic and in English, every page. So Arabic is a right to left language, not a left to right language. So I had to install at the time a different word processor that was specifically for that, and then the software itself couldn't handle both of those, so I ended up having to convert the language into just images and use those. But I didn't understand. I was like, you need to proofread the heck out of this before you give me this information, because I have no I'm just copying and pasting the language in there. If it's wrong, if there are typos in there, that's on you. That is not me, because I am not that subject matter expert. Okay, we're winding it down. We've had an hour getting out job applications. We're hustling our bustles, getting that job. That's what we're doing. All right, and I'm going to be here again in 23 hours. I'm your friend to hang out with while you're getting out those job applications. Look for me on LinkedIn. Look for me on YouTube. Look for me on Twitch. If you just search my name, it's pretty easy to find me. Find my websites if you want to know a little bit about me and the things that I'm working on now and or have worked on in the past. Feel free to reach out and connect with me on LinkedIn. And we will see you again in